Understanding the causes of workplace tension. As long as we work in the places made of people, right, we will see tensions everywhere. We'll see people have different opinions, people have different interests, people have all kinds of agendas clashing together. Let's look at the definition of conflict. Number one, a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one, being compatible or at variance. People are very different. You are this type and I am this type. In terms of working style, in terms of communication, in terms of everything, we're not compatible. If we're not compatible, we cannot work together. We cannot reach the common goals, right? So maybe it's a disagreement and then it's an incompatibility and then clash. When we have clash, that is toxic. That is very toxic. Then that department is about to collapse, basically. We're going to talk about there's a causes of conflict. If we are aware of those root causes of conflict, and we have some strategic planning to handle those things, then we'll be able to handle all kinds of conflict in our workplace or in our career. They are conflicting resources and also styles, perceptions, goals, pressures, roles, and personal values. And number 8, lastly, is unpredictable policies. How are we going to deal with that? Number 1, conflict resources. In Chinese, we say it 僧多粥少. Right? If there's 4 people, but there's only 2 computers, how are we going to do the work? We're going to compete. We're going to fight for it, right? There's not enough resources, but there's so much work need to be done. That's scarcity. And in this case, we can use some techniques such as win-win negotiation. We can lay out the resource, what we have right now, and how are we going to navigate, how are we going to rearrange and prioritize so we can reach the common ground. A lot of times when we face this, we wanted to separate people from the problem. We do not take it personally. Even if this is a scarcity of resources, we still do not want to do personal attack. And most importantly, remember the perception is very important. How you perceive in other people and how you perceive others are very important. How you identify other people's emotion, how you lashing out and how you express your emotion artfully, right? And how to communicate also is very important. And we wanted to focus on the interests, not positions, not your personal interest, but the interest of the organization, the interest of this same group. This has a lot to do with office politics. A lot of times office politics are exactly because of the different interests and different positions clashing together. We wanted to focus on an interest. What are our common interests here as a group, right? Then we can definitely have some common ground, can get something done. And we can also invent options. Sometimes the options are thinking outside the box. We don't necessarily have to use the traditional ways. That sometimes even mean you have to use your own resources, your private resources, not just what belongs to the company. Sometimes I have to make some phone calls. I have to bring my own computer to get things done. And also objective criteria. When we have something that's so attached to it that we do not want to compromise, maybe borrowing some objective criteria, be it a third person, invite some third person, invite some outsiders to have a justification, have a coordination, maybe the way. This technique, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's not your bottom line. Bottom line is non-negotiable, but alternative to a negotiated agreement, something that you can all work around it to reach the compromised agreement. And we want to make sure that we have everything we need to do our jobs, be it resources, tools, human power, or financial power. We wanted to gather together and then candid discussion, how with this resource on hand, how are we going to do this? A lot of times, inventorizing the resources will help the team to have some new idea because we do not even know we have that resource if we do not inventorize first. And there's another type of conflict is the styles. People have different styles. Some people are technical. Some people are very bossy. Some people are good communicators. Some people are not. But when you are in the leadership position, you wanted to consider how to naturally assign tasks that is compatible to your team member. If you're a leader, you want to assign the job that is technical to the most technical person. You do not do it otherwise. And you wanted to differentiate who is the initiator in the group and who is the contributor. Some people are natural contributor, and some people, they are good at initiating things, but they're not good at contributing or finish up things. And there are people always making connections, and they like to coordinate. That's why teamwork is so important than solo, right? And we have orienters. There's people like do all kinds of stuff to make the foundation right based on the details. And there's also evaluators and critics. They wanted to make sure that things are done properly. And we have people that have all kinds of one or two or many of those attributes, but you wanted to identify with them. And of course, in team, we have energizers. Some people are very upbeat, very gung-ho, and some people, they do not talk. They are procedural. They like to work on technical stuff. And there are also recorders. There are people like secretary kind. And this is more related to the human resources, right? Before you go to any company that you will take my Myers-Briggs test. And I found that test is very believable. And also there's a conflict perceptions. This is basically different evaluation of the same stuff. People have their different opinions. People have their different ideas towards things. In this case, we wanted to openly discuss, openly talk about it. If we do not talk about it, then I have my opinion and you have your opinion. My opinion doesn't necessarily matches yours, then we're going to have a problem. That's the conflict. And we learned that in the past, the best way to navigate office politics is to manage the perceptions. We wanted to know what exactly do we want to achieve in this group? And then how do we achieve that despite the differences? And there's a conflict in goals as well, even in the group, even inside the family. If we do not talk about our goals or talk about it very routinely, then everybody's making assumption. What will end up happening is we're all seem very busy, but we got very conflict results, and there will be a lot of chaos in between. So we want to set congruent goals. We wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page. And there's pressures, right? Pressures when we are handling things. There's all kinds of pressure, but how we perceive pressures and how we handle those pressures, we inside the group are also very different. So we wanted to figure that out, and we wanted to also communicate. And it's similar to conflict goals. Pressures are oftentimes have shorter timelines, right? We talked about how to deal with unfair requests, right? And conflict roles, you as a team leader, you wanted to explain why you give this task and why this person is assigned with that particular task. Thus, everybody is still on the same page. And the biggest enemy that we have in the group is still by far assumption. Everybody is making assumptions, but that assumption leads to misunderstanding, leads to confusion, then retaliation. That's why in Toyota, they have this Kanban system. And Kanban system right nowadays is very common among organizations, right? We have a team charter. We know each other's roles, and we can have context, mission and objectives, who is doing what right now, what is your role, and what is your current task, and what is your progress. And we would know very clearly without any equivocations or any confusions. And also, who is the leader here? What is the boundary? What is the absolutely non-negotiables? We also wanted to tell each other. If we are all waiting for someone to tell us, maybe you can take the initiative. Maybe you can help the team to jot down this. And also, what is the resource and support? What do we have? Gather together. The flow chart. What is the support? What is the contingency plan? When we face this situation, how we're going to solve it, right? Overly communicate on different scenarios. And operations, a standardized operation procedure. That is the best way. If you have questions, look your SOP, look your standard operation manuals. If that manual doesn't make sense, let's have a meeting to revise it. And if there's conflict, how are we going to negotiate? How are we going to reach agreement? This is very important in conflict rules, because a lot of times the conflict rules is because of lack of communication. I assume this and you assume that, and we never had something clearly written or clearly communicated or something that we could refer to. then everybody's doing about their own things, thus miscommunication. And different personal values. We now live in a very modern world. People with different background, different education, different upbringing. However, there's something that's common, there's a universal among all humankind, that's ethical leadership. We wanted to practice what is ethical, what is empathetic, and most importantly, integrity is still the golden rule. And there's unpredictable policies as well. So like right now, the COVID, right? A lot of companies, especially in the West Coast, they have large office campuses, but they also have a lot of employees that do not want to return to office. So now what's bothering a lot of leaders are, what is this working from home policy? And how are we going to balance that? How are we going to keep the physical presence of the office building while paying rent and leases, paying all the utility bills, at the same time respect the workers and colleagues' intention to work from home? Even if there's a hybrid policy, it's still, from the company's perspective, it is still a waste of resources. So with all those unpredictable policies due to unpredictable situation, how are we going to do about that? Still communicate. Communicate. Democracy can be utilized here. Communicate exactly what will be done differently. Once people understand the rationale behind it, once people understand why we do this and why we make this compromise, they will understand. They will do it. Because this is also the human nature. People are altruistic. People would help others. Sometimes people actually would sacrifice their own interest for the benefit of the whole humankind. That explains why people are willing to sacrifice their own lives to save some strangers in the river. That is deeply rooted and programmed in our human nature. So the key point is, you want to use all these techniques and strategies to recognize the root cause of conflict between people, whether it is different values, it's because of unpredictable policies, or conflict. Sometimes we just think, oh, we have conflict, that's end all be all. But actually, there's a root causes. We want to really analyze what exactly are the types of the conflict. In this situation, how are we going to do about it? This can help you devise effective conflict resolution strategies.